World-famous adult film actress Jenna Jameson was just days away from her 39th birthday when she was arrested for battery in Newport Beach, California in April 2013. According to reports, the alleged victim placed Jameson under citizen's arrest until the police arrived, which threw a wrench into the performer's plans to attend an early birthday party in her honor at Heat Ultra Lounge in Anaheim later that night. The Orange County District Attorney's Office ultimately dropped the case due to a lack of evidence. Shortly after her arrest, Jameson posted a series of tweets accusing the victim, fellow adult actress Britney Markham, of being a liar, a thief, a complete BSer, and a steroid user who broke into her home and stole from her. The tweets were quickly deleted, but Markham remained upset by the situation and vowed to continue fighting against Jameson even after the battery case was dismissed. Less than a year earlier, in May of 2012, Jameson had been accused of driving while intoxicated after she struck a light pole with her Range Rover. She was charged with 3 counts of driving under the influence of alcohol or other drugs, driving with a blood alcohol level over the state legal limit, and driving on a suspended license. Jameson eventually pleaded guilty to all counts except driving without a valid license, which was dropped, and was sentenced to 3 years of probation. She was also ordered to participate in a Mothers Against Drink Driving Victim Impact panel. In the meantime, nothing seems to have come of Markham's attempt to have Jameson held accountable for the battery allegation. Number 20. Kelsey Michaels. In November of 2019, 33-year-old Danielle N. Powell, better known to her fans as Kelsey Michaels, was accused of murdering her roommate, 25-year-old mother of 2 Leanna Brumley, in Pulaski County, Kentucky. Brumley's charred skeletal remains were found in a remote field 6 months after she was reported missing. The slain woman's mother told reporters that her daughter struggled with addiction and had a habit of couch surfing at the homes of her friends. She was last known to be staying with Powell and a 53-year-old man named Gerald Avalon Hendricks at the time of her disappearance and death. Powell told investigators that Brumley had fallen ill shortly before her death. Instead of taking her to a hospital, Powell and Hendricks allegedly drove Brumley to a remote farm, where Powell shot Brumley under orders from Hendricks, who struck the victim in the head with a hatchet. According to Powell, Hendricks and another accomplice rolled Brumley's body up in a carpet and set it on fire. Both Powell and Hendricks were charged in connection with the case. Powell initially pleaded not guilty to second-degree murder, but eventually took a plea deal and admitted to a reduced manslaughter charge. Hendricks was slated to go to trial in July of 2023, but the proceedings have continuously been met with delays, leaving the current status of the case unclear. Number 19. Nacho Vidal. Better known as Nacho Vidal, 50-year-old Ignacio Jordá González rose to fame as a live adult performer in Barcelona. He went on to star in over 1,500 adult films and also became a director and producer of the genre. Vidal has faced a host of legal problems over the years. In 2012, the performer and his sister were among 80 suspects who were accused of laundering money for the Chinese mob by issuing fake invoices from Vidal's adult movie company. The siblings also allegedly participated in a tax evasion scheme with the organized crime group. While the outcome of the case is unclear owing to Spain's highly protective privacy laws, it was only another handful of years before Vidal landed at the center of yet another legal scandal. This time he was accused of being responsible for the untimely death of fashion photographer Jose Luis Abad, who passed away in 2019 after inhaling toxic toad venom during a spiritual ceremony at Vidal's home. Vidal was presiding over the traditional Amazonian ritual in Anguera, Spain, as a shaman when Abad suffered fatal complications from the venom. Authorities charged Vidal and 2 others with manslaughter based on the allegation that they failed to seek medical help for Abad in a timely manner. In 2021, the charge against Vidal was upgraded to reckless homicide due to his role as the director of the ceremony. He was accused of failing to properly monitor the amount of toxin Abad ingested and of supplying the fatal dose. He could have faced up to 4 years in prison in the event of a conviction, but the charges were dropped in 2023, leaving him a free man. Number 18. Lisa Ann. Lisa Ann Corpora, or Lisa Ann for short, retired from the adult film business in 2014, but she's continued to remain active in show business and on the radio. And she has also remained in the news for less flattering reasons. In February of 2024, the 51-year-old was dragged out of comedian Matt Rife's stand-up comedy show by 4 NYPD officers after she was accused of using her cell phone during the event, and pleaded her innocence as the cops escorted her out of Radio City Music Hall, telling a cameraman, "I did nothing wrong. I did not touch my phone. I want to see Matt Rife because he's a friend of mine." She continued to deny any wrongdoing in a series of social media posts, adding that she spent nearly an hour in handcuffs before the police let her go. In addition to being upset by what she claimed were false allegations, Ann expressed disappointment over missing the show. In one post, she claimed that the only person who was even willing to listen to her side of the story was a kind paramedic who agreed that no one had the right to detain her. Many commenters expressed sympathy for Ann and admonished the NYPD, while a law enforcement spokesperson confirmed that someone had been arrested during the show for being disorderly and combative after ignoring a request to stop videotaping the performance. Number 17. Lynn Passion. Known by the stage names Lynn Passion and Lynn Pleasant, adult actress Katrina Danforth was arrested by federal authorities in December 2018 for attempting to hire a hitman to murder the father of one of her children. The then 31-year-old was reportedly living in Post Falls, Idaho, when she sought the services of an undercover cop posing as a paid assassin. According to court documents, Danforth told the undercover that she didn't care if anyone other than her child was hurt in the process of carrying out the hit. She just wanted the job done, and she was willing to pay $5,000 to make her child's father disappear for good. Danforth mailed a $2,500 down payment and was subsequently taken into custody at Spokane International Airport in Washington on 5 counts of using interstate commerce in the commission of murder for hire. She initially pleaded not guilty, but later admitted to 2 counts of soliciting murder for hire. Danforth was facing up to 10 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000, but her defense attorneys urged the court for leniency based on her difficult childhood. Apparently unmoved by their pleas, the judge fined Danforth $1,000 and sentenced her to the maximum 10-year term, followed by 3 years of probation. Records show that she's serving her time in Tallahassee, Florida, with a projected release date of July 2026. In April 2021, roughly 3 years into her sentence, Danforth requested compassionate release, arguing that her obesity and asthma make her more prone to catching a deadly case of COVID-19. The court rejected the request on several grounds, including Danforth's failure to demonstrate how releasing her after serving 1/3 of her time appropriately reflected the seriousness of her crime. In its ruling, the court cited previous concerns over Danforth's apparent lack of remorse for her crime. Furthermore, the decision stated that the former adult actress's health conditions do not reflect the severity that the situation would require in order for compassionate release to be considered. The court questioned whether Danforth is medically obese and concluded that her asthma is kept under control with medication, circling back to their original point about how her circumstances do not justify releasing her early. Number 16. Rashida Johnson Turner. In late 2017, federal authorities arrested 37-year-old adult actress Rashida Johnson Turner, aka Ms. Feisty, in Los Angeles, California, on suspicion of trying to hire a hitman to kill her 55-year-old boyfriend. According to prosecutors, Turner planned to pay the hired assassin with the proceeds of a $150,000 life insurance policy following the murder of the victim, who was identified in court documents as LG. Unaware that the person she had contacted about the hit had reported her to the FBI, Turner told the informant that she had obtained pure acid as part of her plan to kill LG, but that she was afraid of killing the victim herself due to her fears of legal trouble. In late 2017, she contacted the informant and pushed for the hit to be carried out as soon as possible, stating, "That fly needs to be swatted." Her boyfriend was getting to know a new woman, and she was worried that he would change the beneficiary of his life insurance policy. Turner promised the informant a $50,000 cut of the payout and provided a $500 down payment, at which point the feds took her into custody. In January of 2018, the disgraced performer pleaded guilty to one count of using interstate phone lines with the intent of setting up murder for hire. Records show that she was released from federal prison 4.5 years earlier, in June of 2022. Number 15. Nick Gruber. Former adult actor Nick Gruber first made news headlines in 2010 for dating the much older fashion designer Calvin Klein. The relationship was long over by the time Gruber was arrested in Manhattan in March of 2019 for breaking into an apartment, beating someone with a frying pan and stealing drugs. According to prosecutors, the 29-year-old and his co-defendant, Brandon Steele, assaulted an unarmed victim and refused to let him leave an apartment. In September of 2018, the victim suffered several broken vertebrae, a nearly severed ear, and long-term damage to his vision. Following the incident, Gruber was charged with second-degree assault and unlawful imprisonment. He didn't seem to be taking the situation seriously when he walked past a New York Post reporter on the day of his arraignment and asked how his hair looked. But he soon learned that looking good wouldn't spare him from legal consequences for his actions. Gruber ultimately pleaded guilty to 2 counts of disorderly conduct and was fortunate enough to avoid jail time with a conditional discharge, which meant that he would remain free as long as he followed certain rules set forth by the court. He refused to talk to the press on his way out of the courtroom, limiting his commentary to a complaint about how the authorities made him look bad by accusing him of being a drug dealer. Number 14. Lauren K. Scott. Better known to her fans as Cotta Sky and Dakota Sky, adult performer Lauren K. Scott experienced a tumultuous downward spiral which eventually led to the end of her life. In June of 2017, the then 23-year-old was accused of hitting her boyfriend, Robert Anderson Jr. The incident began when Scott became angry toward Anderson for being distracted by his phone after intercourse. Upset by the young woman's irate behavior, Anderson asked Scott to leave his Pinellas Park, Florida home. According to a police report, Scott refused Anderson's request to leave and instead punched him in the face, leaving him with a cut and swollen lip. He was booked into the Pinellas County Jail on suspicion of misdemeanor domestic battery. As it turned out, Scott was married to another man who lived in California when the altercation occurred. After sorting out her legal issues in Florida, she returned to her husband's home in Los Angeles, where she had been living prior to her arrest. Sadly, the troubled actress's life continued along the wrong path and she passed away from a drug overdose in June of 2021 after a years-long battle with addiction. Scott had reportedly been to rehab several times in the years leading up to her death and was doing her best to stay sober when she tragically lost her battle against her demons. Number 13. Philip Gizzy. British male adult star Philip Gizzy, who goes by the stage name Bruno Knight, landed in hot water with the law in June of 2014 when he was caught trying to smuggle a half-pound of crystal meth into the United States at Los Angeles International Airport. According to authorities, the drugs were found hidden inside a body cavity, landing the 31-year-old in federal court for possession of methamphetamine with intent to distribute. Gizzy pleaded guilty to the charge later that year. Urging the judge for leniency, his defense attorney told the court that her client was not a sophisticated drug user and that the contraband he was caught with was mostly for personal use. The prosecution, on the other hand, recommended a 2-year prison sentence, reminding the court that transporting drugs across international lines is a very serious offense. Ruling in favor of the prosecution, the judge sentenced Gizzy to 2 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. During his sentencing hearing, Gizzy apologized to the court and to the United States for his actions He explained that he was caught in the throes of addiction at the time of his arrest and expressed gratitude for having found sobriety during the 5 months he spent in pre-trial detention. Number 12. Roma Lawson. A half-dressed adult actress was reportedly high on cocaine when she escaped from the backseat of a police cruiser in the English coastal town of Margate in early 2023. 34-year-old Roma Lawson was in the process of being taken into custody on suspicion of driving under the influence of drugs after failing a roadside sobriety test when she stealthily undid her seatbelt and launched herself into the front seat of the patrol car. She managed to wriggle free during an ensuing struggle with 2 officers, leaving her pants behind at the scene as she fled on foot. Police tracked Lawson down at a friend's residence about an hour and a half later, but she continued trying to escape, resulting in the decision to take her to the hospital for her own safety. During one of her repeated escape attempts, she bit an officer in the thigh, leaving behind a nasty bruise. Lawson already had an extensive criminal history at the time of her arrest, which included prior convictions for assault, robbery, cocaine possession, failing to stop at the scene of an accident, and more. Back in 2010, she was accused of leaving her gravely injured best friend behind at the scene of a horrific car crash. To avoid a trial following her most recent arrest, Lawson pleaded guilty to escaping from lawful custody and assaulting an emergency worker. The judge imposed an 8-month suspended prison sentence, noting that Lawson had gotten sober in the months leading up to her sentencing and that she had shown potential for rehabilitation. She was arrested again in August of 2023 and received another suspended prison sentence. Lawson landed back in the courtroom yet again in April of 2024 when she assaulted 2 paramedics who were trying to help her. A member of the public had alerted emergency responders after spotting Lawson in distress, and she initially entered an ambulance willingly before becoming agitated and aggressive. She pleaded guilty to assaulting an emergency worker and criminal damage and was given one final chance to avoid prison time. In July of 2024, the judge overseeing her case gave her 3 months to sober up and prove that she could stay out of trouble in order to remain free. Whether she meets the court's expectations remains to be seen. Number 11. Tory Lane. Lisa Nicole Piasecki, aka Tory Lane, is a multiple Adult Video News Award-winning actress and director. She diverted attention away from her talent in 2015 when she was accused of becoming belligerent and physically abusive on a Delta Airlines flight from Atlanta, Georgia to Los Angeles. Piasecki, who was 32 years old at the time and hails from Irwin, North Carolina, reportedly assaulted passengers and cabin crew members during the flight after getting rip-roaring drunk. Initial attempts by staff members to de-escalate the situation failed, and she was restrained for nearly an hour until the plane touched down at LAX, where police officers dragged her away, kicking and screaming. After being taken to a hospital, Piasecki was booked into custody on suspicion of battery on a law enforcement officer and public intoxication. She was released after posting a $21,000 bond and quickly took to social media, where she reminded her followers that there are 2 sides to every story and that she would talk about the incident once she felt ready to open up. In 2018, more than 3 years after the in-flight fiasco, a civil judge ordered Piasecki to pay nearly $125,000 to flight attendant Jill Buse, who sued the adult performer in the aftermath of her mid-air meltdown. Number 10. Michelle Thorne. In December of 2016, 41-year-old former adult actress and X Factor contestant Michelle Thorne was arrested in Bristol, England, for crashing her car into a pub fence following a drunken argument with a family member. According to police, Thorne was drinking at the pub when a disagreement broke out between her and a relative. She was accused of deliberately ramming her Peugeot into the business's white wicker fence in a fit of rage and was detained overnight while she sobered up. The mother of 2 later told The Sun that law enforcement's depiction of the incident was silly and far-fetched, claiming that the authorities were blowing the situation out of proportion. She was charged with driving under the influence and was released the following day with instructions to return to court at a later date. The outcome of the case is unclear. Number 9. Sona Muellerova. Better known by her stage name, Laura Crystal, Czech adult performer Sona Muellerova was high on crystal meth when she led law enforcement on a high-speed chase through Prague in 2015. The erotic film star, who was 26 years old at the time, fled from a police station in her car after being instructed to turn in her driver's license for an earlier charge of driving while banned. She had reportedly already handed over her license when she changed her mind, took it back, and sped off. The ensuing pursuit reached speeds of nearly 140 miles per hour as Muellerova hightailed it through the country's capital. When she was eventually stopped, she gave the police a fake name, but it wasn't her first time lying about her identity, according to the authorities. And she also claimed that she didn't have her driver's license with her, which was also apparently a lie. Muellerova underwent a test at the police station which proved that she was heavily under the influence of methamphetamine, and she was subsequently sentenced to 8 months in jail. Number 8. Kendra Sunderland. 29-year-old adult film actress Kendra Sunderland lives in Nevada, where people 21 and older can legally possess up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana inside a private residence or a licensed lounge. She learned the hard way that marijuana is still illegal in Texas when she was arrested for felony possession in broad daylight in Montgomery County during the summer of 2024. Despite the charge, she insisted during an interview with TMZ that she's not a criminal, just a stoner. She went on to say that she had been advised not to discuss the case and that she wasn't trying to incriminate herself any further. According to court records, Sunderland was arrested shortly past noon with less than a gram of marijuana in her possession. Authorities are also remaining tight-lipped about the case, leaving the circumstances leading up to the bust a mystery. For the time being, the young woman was released from custody after posting a $1,000 bond and is currently awaiting her next court date, which is scheduled for September. Number 7. Jacqueline McKee. Memphis, Tennessee-based adult film star Jacqueline "Foxy" Jackie McKee already had a controversial reputation when she was arrested on a domestic violence charge in February 2013. According to police, a verbal disagreement between Jacqueline and her husband, Justin McKee, escalated into physical violence when Justin got frustrated with Jacqueline for paying more attention to her phone than she was to the situation at hand. He accused Jacqueline of shoving her phone in his face and kicking him in the head at their home in Cordova, where police took the accused aggressor into custody on suspicion of domestic assault with bodily harm. Jacqueline was released shortly after her arrest with instructions to return to court at a later date. The outcome of the case is unclear. Number 6. Elise Jones, or Chloe Cherry. Also known by her adult performer name Chloe Cherry, actress Elise Jones was arrested in February of 2023 for stealing a $45 blouse from a retail store in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Surveillance footage turned over to law enforcement showed the 26-year-old Euphoria star leaving the building character store in broad daylight with a puffy tan Moda International blouse that she hadn't paid for. Jones later admitted to hiding the blouse on her person before exiting the business and returned the stolen item to an investigator. She already had a history of stealing, which includes a 2015 conviction for theft, and was charged with retail theft following her more recent arrest. 5 months after being nabbed for the blouse incident, Jones was accepted into what's known as the Accelerated Rehabilitative Disposition Program. Commonly known as a diversion program, it gives certain defendants an opportunity to get a charge removed from their record by following certain rules put forth by the court within a specified time period. In Jones's case, she was ordered to take a shoplifting class while serving a year-long probation sentence. For now, Jones's future remains uncertain. While she has managed to avoid any additional criminal allegations, she told the Daily Mail in June of 2024 that she's unsure whether she'll be asked to star in another season of the HBO hit series Euphoria. The actress accused the show's producers of leaving her in the dark, but said that she would definitely go back if given the opportunity. Number 5. David Meza. Early one morning in May of 2015, 52-year-old Texas millionaire Jake Marandino was found murdered along a highway near Rosarito Beach, Mexico. He had been stabbed 24 times and nearly decapitated before being dumped into the ravine where his brutally slain body was discovered. Investigators traced the crime to former adult actor David Enrique Meza of Imperial Beach, California, who was living a double life as an online escort with a pregnant girlfriend. At the time of Merendino's murder, Meza had met the victim nearly 2 years earlier, and the two were entangled in a torrid love affair. According to prosecutors, Meza killed Merendino as part of a scheme to inherit the victim's estate. He enlisted the help of his 21-year-old girlfriend, Taylor Langston, who backed up his false alibi about being at a friend's house on the night of the murder. But when police questioned the friend the couple said they were with, he said he hadn't seen the pair in upwards of 2 years, landing Meza and Langston at the top of the suspect list. To further complicate an already bizarre situation, Langston was unaware that Meza was an adult worker or that he and Merendino were in a relationship at the time of the murder. She believed her boyfriend was working for Merendino as an accountant, that their relationship was strictly professional, and that Merendino was dying of cancer. And while she was aware that Merendino had been lavishing Meza with gifts, she apparently thought the wealthy retired businessman was simply a generous employer. Despite the young woman's claim that she was oblivious to the nature of the situation, both she and Meza were charged in connection with Merendino's death. Meza was found guilty of murder in 2017 and was sentenced to life in federal prison without parole, while Langston pleaded guilty to conspiracy to obstruct justice for sharing a false alibi in exchange for a 21-month federal prison sentence. Number 4. Briana Banks. German adult film star Briana Banks rose to fame during the early 2000s after being named Penthouse's Pet of the Month in June of 2001. More than a decade later, in December of 2012, she was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence outside a McDonald's restaurant in Los Angeles. According to law enforcement, the situation began when Banks was involved in a minor car accident with another driver, who told the police that he suspected Banks of being under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Officers pulled the actress over a short while later after they spotted her car leaving a McDonald's drive-thru. Banks reportedly failed a field sobriety test and was booked and released on a DUI charge. The outcome of the case is unclear. Number 3. Casey Jordan. During his very public breakdown in 2011, actor Charlie Sheen partied for 36 hours straight with former adult actress Casey Jordan. The Two and a Half Men star reportedly paid the 22-year-old blonde bombshell $30,000 for her companionship, just days before he was rushed to the hospital in the throes of a mental crisis. Jordan later told E! News that Sheen used so much cocaine and alcohol during their time together that it seemed like he was on a mission to self-destruct. She also criticized the troubled celebrity for not lasting very long in the bedroom while describing him as kind and sweet. Sheen's representatives responded to Jordan's claims with a statement accusing opportunistic women of trying to take advantage of his celebrity status while he sought help for his issues. Moreover, a look into Jordan's past revealed that she was far from innocent. Back in 2009, about 2 years before Sheen's meltdown, she was arrested in West Hollywood on suspicion of driving under the influence. The Daily Mail published details of the arrest, along with the adult star's tear-soaked mugshot, and Jordan spent 20 days in jail after pleading no contest to the charge. When Sheen went public about his positive HIV status in 2015, roughly 4 years after the meltdown, Jordan told the Daily Mail that she wasn't surprised, given the disgraced actor's history of risky behavior. At the same time, she commended Sheen for being open about his diagnosis while expressing newfound fears about her reputation, given their confirmed past of being intimate with one another. Jordan said she had been tested multiple times and was negative for the virus, but she was still worried that her previous association with Sheen would affect her professional image. She also admonished Sheen for his frequent encounters with erotic performers, despite being an adult actress herself, and said that she hoped he continued to make positive changes in his life. Today's topic was requested by Fluffy and John DeMoel, 2629. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Nicole Walter. Throughout 2020, a nanny who moonlights as an adult actress was accused of several crimes. 27-year-old Nicole Walter of Pensacola first caught charges in April for doing illicit things on camera near minors. In that case, she was charged with lewd and lascivious behavior, aggravated assault, resisting arrest, and other crimes in Escambia County. She was released from jail 2 days later after posting $72,500 bail, but remained under investigation amid her ongoing case. Following Walter's first arrest, Escambia County Sheriff David Morgan broadcasted a live video urging any victims to come forward. Within 24 hours, 20 to 30 people came forward claiming to have had prior contact with the suspect, and while none of those calls directly led to additional charges being brought against Walter, the investigation yielded findings that led to new charges. Walter was arrested again in July of 2020, 3 months after her first arrest, on suspicion of human trafficking. According to law enforcement, she was suspected of financially benefiting from illegal activities involving juveniles. More specifically, she allegedly filmed herself doing inappropriate things in public places and uploaded the videos to adult websites. Based on the content, it was clear that Walter had recorded herself within the vicinity of people who were trying to enjoy their day at parks, playgrounds, and other family-friendly spaces. Records show that Walter was convicted of 2 counts of possessing inappropriate material and is serving a 4-year probation sentence. Her supervision is scheduled to end in March of 2026. As you can see, these adult entertainers ended up on the wrong side of the law. Now, let's find out how Cougar's lustful desires can put them in hot water. Stick around till after number 1, because we've got our previous release of When Malicious Cougars Go Wrong coming up next. Number 1. Marilyn Chambers. Known professionally as Marilyn Chambers, Marilyn Ann Taylor rose to fame as an adult performer in the early 1970s. In February of 1985, she was charged with committing a lewd act in a public place and soliciting prostitution after a Vice Squad arrested her in the middle of an on-stage performance in San Francisco. Plainclothes cops posing as audience members accused Chambers of allowing men to touch her during the show. She was released on $2,000 bail and the case was eventually dropped. Chambers claimed that this was her first time getting in trouble with the law. She expressed disappointment over her arrest, saying that she thought San Francisco was a hip city and that she felt bad for disappointing her fans. Furthermore, she argued that she wasn't committing any crimes because she wasn't taking money in exchange for letting her spectators touch her. Later that year, Chambers was arrested once again in the middle of a performance, this time at an adult club in Cleveland. Police accused her of having physical contact with an audience member while completely unclothed and charged her with promoting prostitution. Chambers was freed on $1,000 bail and denied the charge, saying that she wasn't doing anything differently during that particular show than she had during her 6 previous performances in Cleveland. After retiring from the biz, Chambers dabbled in various other industries and lines of work. In 2004, she ran for vice president on the Personal Choice Party ticket. She received just 946 votes, but she didn't let it discourage her from running again in 2008, which also resulted in a loss. Chambers passed away from an aneurysm in her Santa Clarita, California home in 2009 at the age of 56. In 2018, British supply teacher Kandice Barber of Wendover, Buckinghamshire, met a teenager at a sporting event put together by Prince's Risborough School. The woman, then in her early 30s, added the unnamed teen on Snapchat. Within a week, their exchanges became explicit. Barber, who would later be accused of grooming, sent the teen provocative texts as well as nude photos and videos. She eventually picked him up in her SUV and drove him to a remote field. The victim would later reveal that Barber kissed him on the neck next to a bale of hay and asked, "What do you want to do now?" before they had relations. She reportedly continued sending the teen sordid messages even as she was teaching him in class. Barber threatened to bring him down by falsely accusing the teen of abuse if he disclosed their relationship. Their tryst was eventually exposed after a topless photo that the married mother of 3 had sent the teen started circulating around the school and reached the headmaster. Barber was arrested 4 months later in March of 2020. She was found guilty of having relations with the teen and of the X-rated communication with him. Barber was jailed for more than 6 years. Updates on the matter indicated that her husband, delivery driver Daniel, had decided to remain by her side. In the scandal's wake, several media outlets reported on Barber's past relationships, adding context to her crime. Prior to her marriage when she was 29, Barber had dated an 18-year-old she'd met at a previous job. Another of the woman's exes reported that he'd had to put an end to their relationship due to her insatiable appetite and constant demand for intercourse. Number 7. Mary Frances Fletcher. California woman Mary Frances Fletcher, also known as Debbie Fletcher, was arrested in February of 2017 after it emerged that she'd had unlawful intercourse with 3 players from the Mount Shasta High School football team. The case would receive nationwide attention and was documented in publications such as the New York Post and the LA Times. 42-year-old Fletcher had reportedly met the male teenagers while working with the football team's photographer. The illegal relationships that developed included texts, which were later used as evidence, and meetups outside of school grounds. Fletcher's messages indicated that she was trying to get the teens to keep quiet about their trysts. This resulted in a separate charge of dissuading a victim or witness. Siskiyou County Sheriff John Lope told the media that it was one of the more difficult cases he'd encountered during his 39-year career, remarking that it was pretty unusual for students to be exploited like this in the county's tight-knit communities. Fletcher eventually pleaded guilty in 2019 and was jailed for 6 months the following year. At sentencing, her defense argued that the woman's judgment was clouded at the time of the incident, as she reportedly had a drinking problem and was herself a victim of abuse. Number 6. Marrian Zambrano. Florida woman Marrian Zambrano was outside a restaurant at Lake Sumter Landing on Christmas Eve 2018 when she approached one of the establishment's employees. As later indicated by a police complaint, the intoxicated 64-year-old grabbed the unnamed man by the crotch area and tried to lower his pants. She proceeded to dance on him and grind her chest on his body. Zambrano then asked the worker to come home with her. The man shut down her advances, as reflected by surveillance footage and multiple witness reports. Zambrano hugged him, kissed his neck and whispered in his ear, but the worker kept his hands up and didn't touch her. He did reportedly offer to help Zambrano find a ride home, fearing that she would try to drive in her condition. In the incident's aftermath, the Lady Lake resident was arrested for battery and booked into the Sumter County Jail. She spent less than 3 hours behind bars before being released on a $1,000 bond. Number 5. Melanie Sykes. On May the 18th of 2013, English television presenter Melanie Sykes, aged 43, married her 27-year-old boyfriend Jack Cockins. A few months later in November, the latter called the police to their Hampstead home. Sykes was handcuffed and taken to a North London police station after Cockins had accused her of assault. In the altercation, he'd suffered unspecified injuries that didn't require hospitalization. The media personality was cautioned for the incident. In the aftermath, she filed for divorce from Cockins after less than 1 year of marriage. The caution was later removed from her record, and Sykes would accuse the police of mishandling her case by misleading her into believing that accepting the punishment was her best option. She began campaigning for better treatment of women spuriously accused of assault by their spouses who seek to financially and legally hurt them by doing so. Number 4. Laura Lanham. In March of 2012, technology consultant Willard Lanham was found guilty on 4 counts of theft and fraud after he'd stolen roughly $1.7 million from the New York City Department of Education. In recent years, he'd run 2 overbilling schemes to massively mark up the cost of subcontractors who'd worked for him, including his brother. The scandal also brought into mainstream attention the lifestyle of Willard's ex-wife, Laura, a self-described cougar with aspirations of becoming a reality star. The mother of 3 was a blogger on a site dedicated to life as a cougar, which she claimed to have fully embraced, following the separation from 58-year-old Willard 4 years prior. Because of financial constraints, the couple continued living together in separate rooms in a large house on Long Island, found on Laura Lane, a street built and named after the woman. She reported in a 2010 post that she felt empowered by the attention of younger men and that she was looking for fun and excitement with no ties. Laura had at one point posed for nude photos which she sent to Playboy before launching a pin-up calendar on her site, thehousewivesnextdoor.com. Following Willard's legal troubles, she became the focus of intense media attention and made appearances on Good Morning America and Inside Edition. Court documents reveal that Willard blamed the scan on Laura's highly ostentatious midlife crisis and indiscreet lifestyle, which he claimed had left him alone to provide for their teenage daughter. He asked for a reduced sentence and reported that their daughter couldn't rely on 43-year-old Laura, whom he described as emotionally unstable. The Cougar denied the allegations, calling her ex a master manipulator and accusing him of having repeatedly cheated on her in the past. Willard's sentence indicated that his concerns had been taken into consideration, as he was given 3 years in prison for the education scam in the fall of 2012. Manhattan prosecutors had initially asked for 9 years. Number 3. Maple Ridge Cougar. Law enforcement in British Columbia, Canada, cuffed the cougar in February of 2022 after the animal had been spotted prowling through a neighborhood in Maple Ridge. Royal Canadian Mounted Police officers and a conservation officer arrived near 230 Street and 118 Avenue on a Sunday afternoon after a resident had called about the cougar making its way into their backyard. Considering the fact that the animal was in a densely populated area in broad daylight, officers arrived at the scene expecting that they'd have to put it down. However, they were ultimately able to come up with a different solution. Officers asked residents to remain inside and they tranquilized the large feline. Handcuffs were temporarily placed on its paws until conservation authorities secured it for relocation. The commander overseeing the operation, who was only identified as Sergeant Heisler, spoke to the media and expressed his appreciation for the public's assistance in the successful relocation, adding, "We certainly did not want to see this beautiful creature euthanized." Number 2. Jeevani Wickramaratna. 44-year-old Jeevani Wickramaratna was given jail time in the summer of 2012 after harassing her male co-workers at several companies in England. The woman first fixated on a man named Paul Stokes, with whom she worked at Ray Marine in Portsmouth. Wickramaratna fabricated a story that they were intimately involved and sent him messages, claiming that she told his family about the affair. She even posted a message on Facebook, falsely alleging that Stokes was HIV positive. The latter alerted the police, stating that the stories concocted from the woman's deranged imagination had become more aggressive and led him to fear for the safety of his wife and children. Wickramaratna was contacted by the police and asked to cease communication with Stokes, but she wrote back, revealing explicit details of their non-existent affair, referring to herself as the office cougar with whom the man was supposedly involved. She left Ray Marine and started working in Shepton Mallet, Somerset, for a company called Wimax, which was run by a husband and wife team. Within weeks, she began messaging co-worker Per Khan, accusing him of making her feel uncomfortable. She then sent him a number of threatening messages that were purportedly from her boyfriend, Jeremy, whom the police determined didn't exist. Wickramaratna reported Khan to their employer, Kazim Benzir. She pestered the latter with over 100 abusive messages after he'd chosen to suspend her and Khan. Wickramaratna did so in spite of pleas from Benzir's seriously ill wife Joanna for her to stop. Wickramaratna was arrested and found guilty on 3 counts of harassment. The sentencing judge called her a fantasist, incapable of telling the truth or showing remorse for her lies. She was jailed for 26 weeks. Number 1. Anna Vinokurova. In the spring of 2021, Russian woman Anna Vinokurova contacted a removal service to help her move a fridge from her home in Krasnoyarsk to another district in the city. As they were moving the appliance, the workers noticed a trail of blood flowing from it in the back of the truck. They questioned the mother of one who promptly confessed to the brutal killing of her boyfriend, 27-year-old Evgeny. Approximately 8 days earlier, Vinokurova and Evgeny had gotten into a violent argument while drinking at their home. As tensions escalated, Vinokurova stabbed Evgeny in the chest with a kitchen knife, killing him. She then used a saw to cut him up, packed the severed remains in bags, and put them in a fridge. Vinokurova went on to spend over a week with the dismembered body in her home before deciding to have the fridge relocated. After the gruesome revelation, the workers contacted the police, who took Vinokurova into custody. She was charged with murder and faced up to 15 years in prison if convicted. Vinokurova had previously been in prison for dealing drugs and had started dating Evgeny in October of 2020, not long after she had been released from custody. Number 10. Judith Ann Black. In late April of 2021, an elderly Florida woman received a felony charge after throwing a Whopper at an African-American Burger King employee and going on a racially charged tirade. The root cause of 77-year-old Judith Ann Black's discontent was the thickness of the tomato slice in her sandwich. She became enraged, and when an unnamed employee tried to calm her down, Black threw the Whopper, which hit her in the back. Black, a white woman, then launched a series of slurs at the worker before storming out. She was tracked down by law enforcement with the help of surveillance footage and eyewitness reports. Black was later taken into custody and admitted to her behavior, claiming, "I was angry." In accordance to Florida law, the racist expletives enhanced the charge of battery from a misdemeanor of the first degree to a felony of the third degree. Number 9. Pecola Duncan. In 2019, a Tennessee woman stabbed her husband as he was napping in a recliner and, upon being questioned by the authorities, reportedly seemed cheerful and unfazed by her actions. When officers arrived at the Clinton home of Pecola and Harold Duncan, aged 72 and 66 respectively, they saw the latter exiting the home while holding a bloody towel to his chest. He was rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. Pecola told the authorities that she'd stabbed Harold after he became physically violent towards her and dragged her down the hallway. However, officers noted that there weren't any signs of a struggle in the home, and Pecola presented no injuries to suggest she'd been attacked. Before being taken into custody, the elderly woman asked if Harold had died from his wounds, reportedly saying, "I hope he did." She was charged with first-degree attempted murder and held at the Anderson County Detention Facility on a $100,000 bond, while awaiting trial, as well as, most likely, an assessment of her mental state. Thanks for watching. Would you rather date an adult performer or an A-list celebrity? Let us know in the comments section below.